It's that moment you've all been waiting for. It is time to prepare for your frog dissection. So the purpose of doing the frog dissection lab is to apply what you guys have learned about the digestive, circulatory, and respiratory systems of the body to the frog's anatomy. There's actually some very close similarities between frogs and humans. And the second learning goal would be for you to practice working collaboratively with other students to carry out a lab investigation. So the basic materials you will be using will be the preserved frog specimen. You'll hear more about that in just a minute. A scalpel, which is like a small knife for making cuts. In our picture here, this is a scalpel. The scissors, which are for longer cuts. And actually the scissors are probably going to be your most commonly used tool. You even probably will use the scissors more than the scalpel. Forceps, which is the sciencey name for tweezers. You guys know what those look like. A dissecting tray, which is this. It's a pan basically with wax melted into the bottom so that you can pin the organism into the pan, so wait and hold still. And a dropper. You'll find out what this is for as you go through the directions. Plastic bags for keeping the frog. You will place it in a plastic bag between day 1 and day 2 activities. And then dissecting pins, which are these, and those are for placing and holding the frog in the pan. We also have gloves, which you can wear as well. Safety concerns for this lab. One is that you need to cut away from you since you're working with sharp instruments like scissors and scalpels. You need to be conscious of your gloves. We only have one size of gloves this year. However, sometimes the gloves tend to be really big and we don't want them to be too loose so that you can't see like where your fingers are. Really, the only people that need to wear the gloves are the dissectors. So if you are taking a turn at dissecting, then be conscious of that. And if they're really big, let me know and we'll secure them with a rubber band so they don't get in your way. Be careful with the pins. They are very sharp. And in terms of disposing the frog, it needs, every part of the frog needs to go back in the paper bag or plastic bags that you'll be given, and then we'll seal those up and we'll have a special receptacle for those at the end of day 2. Also, it's not really a safety concern, but just a respect for the frog. You should just be following the directions we are giving you and do not mutilate the frog. And what I mean by that is it should be relatively intact when you're done with it. We are using it to study the body parts, the body systems that you guys have been learning about, and taking it apart beyond that just shows sort of a lack of respect for the organism. Some background information on the frogs. We're using leopard frogs, and probably based on their name, you can, in the picture here, you can probably guess how they got their name. They are leopard frogs because they have this pattern of spots on their skin. And they're native to North America. Sometimes you'll hear them called grass frogs, and there's about 14 species that belong into that category. The genus Rana is the larger group of frogs that they belong to. So they come to us sealed up in these bags, a whole bunch in there together, and they are dead when they come to us. So here is the story about how they raise these frogs. The current source for most preserved frogs in biology has an interesting history. Several decades ago, an area of desert was converted to farmland through irrigation. Man's changing of that land also resulted in a large increase in the frog population in this area. One industry that emerged from this new resource is the provision of frog legs for food. Yes, people do eat frog legs. A fraction of the grass frogs collected from that man-made habitat are preserved for biological study, and a different species than what we're using, bullfrogs, sometimes are cultured, meaning grown, raised, reproduced, specifically for use as biological specimens. So again, these have been purchased. They're raised to be used in a science classroom. It's not like we went out and caught all of these frogs and then euthanized them ourselves. They are preserved in a substance called formalin. So that's the chemical smell that you will notice. And they have been injected with latex, which is like a plastic, into their circulatory system. So you can see where the veins and arteries are better than you would be had they not been injected.
Hey, put him down. How would you like it if someone picked you up by your tail? Oh, you know what I mean. Dear Tim and Moby, what are amphibians? From Lay. Amphibians are vertebrate or backbone-bearing animals like frogs, salamanders, and newts. Their ancestors were the first vertebrates to venture onto land about 370 million years ago. Existing amphibians are split into three groups. Anurans, or frogs and toads, have short bodies, strong legs, and no tails. Urodels have long bodies, short legs, and flattened tails for swimming. Organisms in the group Apoda are called caecilians. These guys are practically blind, worm-like creatures that look a lot like snakes. Most amphibians split their lives between land and water in a similar way. They're born in the water, stick to the land as adults, and return to the water to breed. Well, many amphibians undergo a metamorphosis that lets them move from a water life to a land life. Take frogs. A frog starts out as a fertilized egg cell in the water. The egg develops into a tadpole that lives in the water and breathes using gills. As the tadpole matures, it grows legs and its body shape changes. When metamorphosis is complete, the frog has a set of lungs that allows it to breathe outside of the water. Strong back legs help it to move on land, and big eyes and a long tongue help it spot and catch prey. Amphibians are ectothermic, or cold-blooded. That means they depend on their surroundings to establish their body temperature. In extreme hot and extreme cold weather, amphibians sometimes go through a period of reduced metabolic activity called torpor. It's a little bit like hibernation. Yeah, I always thought it would be fun to slow down and just sleep. Hey, what are you doing down there? What? I'm not gonna pour water on you.
Okay, let's talk about some of the logistics for the actual days of the dissection. You guys will work in teams of 3 or 4 students. These will be pre-assigned. You guys will know this probably tomorrow on Wednesday prior to the actual dissecting days. And within each team there will be some roles. There will be a team captain, 2 dissectors. If you are in a team of 3, then you'll only have 1 main dissector and a recorder. And within those 2 days, you guys can switch roles, or even within a period, you can switch roles, and everyone can do each role if that's what you would like. Everyone should be helping with managing materials and cleaning up. Here's a better description of what each person would do. The team captain would be pretty much taking charge of the packet and reading the directions aloud to the group. They're going to ensure that the group carries out the directions and stays on task. And if there's any questions or need for help, they're going to be the person to communicate with the teacher. Then we have the 2 dissectors who will be listening to the captain read aloud. They'll be following any directions that the captain says. So if there's a place to cut or something to do to the frog, they would carry those things out. Primarily, dissector 2 would be helping to place organs on the display chart. And then your recorder records the group's answer to all the questions and diagrams. However, they are just writing for the whole group. They're not responsible for coming up with the answers by themselves. And I mentioned before, you can change roles even between the 2 days or within the day if you like. So day 1, we're looking at all the external anatomy of the frog and the mouth, inside the mouth. Really the only cutting will be to the sides of the mouth so that you can see on the inside. And then at that point you'll be placing your frog in a plastic bag with your team name on it and be carrying on with the rest the next day. And the next day is internal anatomy. So more logistics, before Thursday and Friday, you guys should be thinking about what role you would prefer so you can be ready to volunteer when you're put with your team and you know what job you think you want to do. And when the 2 days of the dissection, you'll come in, locate your team number and what team you're on, and sit with your team where marked. There will be one copy of the directions, so your team captain will be charged of reading that to all. And there will be an answer sheet for the whole group, just one, and the group recorder will be writing on that sheet. We already talked about they don't have to come up with the answers by themselves. They're just writing the team's answers down. So when you guys are performing the lab, basically you will be observing and examining the frog, and the directions for what to do on that will be found in this booklet. So your facilitator will read those aloud to your group. You're going to be asked to label parts of the frog and answering questions with your team. And I would recommend that you do that right along with the observation. It's really hard to go back and answer those questions after you've just moved on to a different activity within the lab. So make sure you're answering those as you go each day. Other cautions: please don't damage or mutilate your frog beyond what the directions explain. It's just disrespectful to the frog and disrespectful to the process of science. Scientists don't mutilate anything. Don't taunt other people with frog parts. You know, some people can be squeamish, so please be respectful of that. If you are feeling squeamish, you should still participate. You can be the recorder or the team captain. I really feel like there is no substitute for doing a frog dissection, even digitally. In terms of cleanup, everyone's responsible for cleanup and management of materials. We'll have a special parts or a plastic bin or bag for frog parts, and that will be the garbage can. Any of your dissecting tools, the tray, should be rinsed in the sink and left to dry. And then your tables are going to be wiped down with a sponge and some spray. And like every lab we do dealing with chemicals, you guys should wash your hands when you're finished. Okay, now you guys are going to participate in a virtual frog dissection just to kind of get yourself a little bit familiar with the procedures. And this is going to be open in Smart Notebook. There is a link for the file in e-learning, and the program is going to prompt you to dissect the frog. And when you're finished, you guys are going to write a procedure as detailed as you can so that someone else would know the steps for dissecting a frog. This is a screenshot of what the program looks like. All of your tools are right here. Okay, if you hold your cursor over it, it will tell you what is what. And down here are your directions. On your paper, you're going to write your own procedure. Try to be as detailed as possible. When you say, for instance, to cut the frog, you need to be specific about where and how. So try to use that really good detailed language. You also have a practice identification chart. So this is a frog that's been opened up. See if you can label the organs. Use your notes if you like. You'll have pretty much organs from the digestive, respiratory, and circulatory system. And then this is just a reflection about what you're thinking here as we lead into the frog dissection. So on the days that we are doing the dissection, you probably should leave your laptop in your locker, but still bring your binder with your writing utensils and so on. If you bring your laptop to class, it will need to go on the counter and not at the workspace at the tables. And when you come in, you'll find your team number on a clipboard that'll be at the front of the room, and the classroom will be arranged differently. in sort of pods of tables where you'll be sitting, and there'll be a number hanging over the table. So find your number and sit at that number. And you must have completed your notes and a completed quiz prior to the dissection. We'll do the quiz tomorrow. I will be checking notes and stamping just to ensure that you completed those before Monday. This is what the rubric looks like. You guys are earning 44 points on this activity potentially, and it's divided into these categories. Daily behavior and teamwork, you have 5 points each, and there's a descriptor here. The tasks of the dissection, actually performing it correctly, and that's divided into both days, the external anatomy and the internal anatomy. And the written work, which you guys will do as a team, of course. There is several sections. All the written work each day requires some labeling and some questions to be answered. So you complete that and you do it accurately. And then your cleanup each day is graded.